Hello everybody! Here's a fun project someone who loves crafting with their hands, using their mind, and making beautiful, unique displays for their home or as a gift for a special nature lover in their life. I'll share with you step-by-step techniques I used in crafting this. Techniques you may use in your next project. Very easy to do. To be honest, the first thing I had to do was to go online and see what Elkhorn coral looked like. Once I found the idea, I traced it out on a piece of cardboard and cut it out. The very first thing I did was to measure the place where I wanted to display it. I had to make sure the coral would fit in that space. And once I did that, I was ready to go. What I'm doing here is gluing my cutouts to a piece of cardboard as a base, which will hold up my display. Make sure your base is big enough and stable enough to hold everything up. You can see I'm hot gluing and also bending the cardboard to give it shape. I have to cut the base to each piece of coral so I can work on each piece. Note how each piece of coral has its own base, and later, when the coral's finished, will all fit back together like a puzzle. For me, the cardboard is too flat. It needs to have some shape. I'm just bending the heck out of it to give it character, and seeing how each piece fits and looks when all together. I'm going to use paper mache to stiffen everything up. I'm going to use a mix of flour and water, and I'm going to mix it together to create a runny mix. Then I'm going to add a thin layer of paper mache to each side, and I'll let it dry. Try not to put too much because the cardboard will get wet and flop over. If that happens, just lay it on its side, continue finish, and let it dry. This you have to do again. Feels kind of weird breaking and crushing something you just got through working on. But you have to do it because coral's not flat. You want it to be all crinkled up. Don't hesitate about beating on it. Bend it again into shape. The next few layers of paper mache will help stiffen everything up. After adding 3 layers of paper mache, it's now time to add some texture. I'm using crushed ramen chicken flavored noodles. I'm priming all the coral with a thick, wet layer of primer, then adding the ramen noodles to the wet primer and let dry. After it dries, I'll use my hot glue gun to go along the edges and I'll add more noodles to it. Then I'll add 2 more heavy coats of primer to finish it off. I'm mixing in joint compound with water to fabricate a form to shape the fish's body. Then let dry. The joint compound has firmed up enough for easy carving. I'm just going to cut away the excess, leaving what looks like a fish's body. Then I'll let that dry. I'm covering the fish's body with plastic and layering paper mache strips over the plastic, molding it to the body's form. Then I'll let that dry. It's ready to be trimmed, sanded, and 2 more layers of paper mache, and sanding each layer after it dries. And don't forget, subscribe. This time I'm adding paper mache to form his tail and fins. I'm just laying a few layers of paper mache off his tail area and his body where I want fins to be. After it dries, I'll cut out the shapes of the tail and fins. This step you don't have to do. I'm doing it to give the body and fins more strength. Plus it also puts a nice hard shell over it. And once it dries, I'll sand it smooth. Again, you don't need to do this. It's just something I want. It's finally time for paint. I sanded the glued surface and added a latex primer over it. Once that dried, I sanded it smooth. Now I didn't show the actual painting of the fish, but I did use acrylic paints to finish the job. Paint the clownfish the way you want them to be, because they're all different. Sanding's important. I sand everything, every layer. I keep sanding. You want everything to be nice and smooth. So sanding's like a must. You have to keep sanding. It's like, if you don't like sanding, this is not your project. Here's my painted fish on the finished coral. The coral I put back in their positions like a puzzle. I hot glued their bases to a square piece of wood. I added ramen noodles to a paper mache paste and added it to the bottom to look like gravel. I glued in some real stones, and I cut up a green plastic container I had to look like seaweeds and glued them into place. And the fish is attached using wire. The secret is, I cut a 3-inch piece of drinking straw and glued it to the back of the coral. Then I bent the wire and glued it to the back of the fish. To attach the fish to the coral, I just slide the wire into the drinking straw And to hide the wire, I painted the wire white. Can't say it. The first thing I did was to go online and see what The first thing I did. The first thing I did was to go online and see what The first thing I did was to go online and see what To be honest, the first thing I did was go online to see what Elkhorn coral looked like. And once I had that idea.